Good afternoon, this is Miss Young here. Again, this is the next video in the playlist on how to write a very simple decimal to hexadecimal converter, and we're limiting it to hexadecimal digits just to make life very much simpler for us. And so far we've looked at how we would do that on paper. And then we've looked at how to implement that in OCR exam reference language, how to implement that in Cambridge GCSE pseudocode, how to implement it in Python, which is also the Edexcel standard pseudocode, as well as Visual Basic, C#, and JavaScript. No, I'm lying to you. In Java today, we're going to look at JavaScript. Now, one of the problems with doing this in JavaScript is that JavaScript would generally be either used on the front end, and any input would come via the browser. And so, as we don't want to do that, that makes life a little bit difficult simply for asking the user to enter a number between 0 and 255. Alternatively, we can use Node and use JavaScript on the back end. But generally speaking, you're not going to be asked to enter a value into the console. So in the interest of transparency, I did in fact just find something online which allows me to create a prompt on the back end. And this is how that code that I've just copied in, which I'm going to use just to do the part of the question that allows us to enter a number between 0 and 255. You can see it's a little bit more complicated than all of the others. Even the Java, where we had to use scanner, was simply much simpler than we have right now. But let's move on. So what do we want to do? Well, we can say let's, and because D number might change, I'll tell you what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to copy and paste the first one decimal to hex, and I'm going to use again I'm going to use the C# because the similarities are quite striking. So the first thing I need to do is, because this uses an async method, which you don't need to know about that, but I'm going to just type an async function. Normally you wouldn't write async, you would just write function, but for now that's what we're going to do. And of course, because it's an async function, I need to just go and use await, which we can do that because this is a module, not a common JS, it's a regular module, and so that's fine. So how do we change all of this? Well, we can now go back to using just one line of code, and D number, let me just go back a second. Let's just try and show you how to change this here. So we want, instead of int, because it's not a typed language, we can say D number is equal to, and we want to await the prompt, and the prompt that we want to show is that prompt. And then here nothing changes while D number is less than 0, and we use the same OR. And again, we can just now copy, instead of having these two lines, we can do that, but we don't want to let it because we've already declared D number. And of course, we just want to change the message slightly to say invalid entry. So more like the Python, it's an input as opposed to having to write the output and then input. Not much change here. Well, digit 1 and digit 2 here, they're not going to change, so we can declare those as const, so nothing else will change here, but a modulo is the same here. Unfortunately, like the Visual Basic, we're going to use math.floor to round this number down to the whole integer division. Now again, one of the nice things about JavaScript most recently is it's not particularly fussy about the semicolons, so you can have them, or if you forget them, it's not going to be such a issue for you as it would be in, say, C#. Now again, because Hdigit might change, we can't make it a const, so I'm going to say let, and we simply have camel case in JavaScript versus Pascal case for function names in C#. And none of this changes. This is exactly the same code. This is exactly the same code. And in here, instead of console.writeLine, it's lowercase, and it is console dot, and we can just log. We could do info, but standard is just console.log, and we can keep that exactly the same. So in reality, the JavaScript, obviously we had to do a fudge because it's not meant for entering data at the prompt. But this code is almost identical. This code is essentially the same as the Visual Basic code, except we have declaring it as const because it's not typed. This is the same as the C#. This is a minor change from a Pascal case to camel case. No change here, no change here, and then instead of console.writeLine or print or output, it's simply console.log, and we can save that. And what we can do is we can go node, and it's called main.js, and if we run that now, we see we can enter a number. Let's go with the classic 42, which would give us 2a, and it says math.floor is not a function. Let's just see math. It's a lowercase floor. Okay, that's not a problem. We'll try again. I will enter 42, and it gives us 2a. So we can try again. We can put in 255, and we can see that this code works just fine. So between the C# and JavaScript, certainly at this low level, without using detailed APIs, there is not a great deal of change. We're still using the exact same process that we were for exam reference language, for Python, for Cambridge. No real change. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to check, and we're going to do, again, I'm not going to do version 2 when this version, in my opinion, is so much more straightforward. So again, I'm going to make this an async function. You would normally just make this a function, and I'm going to just change this to 3 so we don't forget. So again, because this code and this code doesn't change, I'm going to just copy and paste this code down to here. And again, nothing changes here except this is a constant. We're not going to change anything in the lookup table, so that changes nothing. In this case, the Hdigit is not changing either, so we can make this one a constant too, and we can steal this console.log from here. So what have we changed? Instead of calling that typed, we just said it is a constant, but this stays exactly the same. This we've already been through, but it's very, very similar to every other line of code that we've done. It's the same process. While, again, this is untyped, but we need to select. Again, it would work if we put let. It would even work if we put var, which would be silly, but all of that would work. And again, this would work if we use let, but we're not. So let's see if we can run this code now. I'll save it, and I'll run that, and we'll put in 20, which should give us 1, 4, which it does. Then I'll try the good old 42, which should give us 2a, which it does. And then I will try 252 this time, which should give us fc, which it does. And so we can see that once you have the structure of the code, converting it between, it doesn't matter, exam reference language, Cambridge GCSE pseudocode, Python, Visual Basic, C#, Java, even JavaScript, there's simply no substantive difference between them. A few things like we've used math.floor for Visual Basic, and here we've used percent, and sometimes we've used div and mod, but they're minor things that one can, certainly in the real world, can just quickly Google. The question is, do you understand how to do the problem? Having the words to write that is a different matter. Unless we know what we want to do, we can work out the words to do that. And so hopefully this has been of benefit for you. I've now gone through and we've looked at exam reference language for OCI. We've looked at Cambridge GCSE. We've looked at Python, which is for all of them, including Edexcel and WJEC. We've looked at Visual Basic, which is allowed by most specifications. We've looked at Java, which is allowed by most specifications, or C# if you're going to look at AQA, and also JavaScript, which is allowed by OCR, as well as one of its high-level languages. The only thing that we haven't covered from OCR perspective is PHP, Delphi, and regular basic. But hopefully that's been enough, and if anybody really is desperate for me to go back 30 years and dust off my Delphi Pascal skills, then I'm quite happy to do that. But I strongly suspect that nobody is touching Delphi in 2025. So I've been Miss Young, hope that's been helpful, and I'll speak to you all later.